What is it that stirs within us when the world grows quiet? Why do those who have walked through life's labyrinth, its radiant peaks and shadowed valleys, find solace in their own company? Welcome to Ancient Wisdom, a haven where timeless truths illuminate the modern soul. Today, we embark on a profound exploration. Why do the experienced, those seasoned by the raw pulse of existence, turn towards solitude not as a retreat, but as a return? This is no mere escape from the clamor, it is a deliberate dance with the self, a symphony played in silence where wisdom finds its voice. Here, through the lens of philosophy, psychology, and lived experience, we uncover the allure of being alone, a state not of isolation, but of illumination. Whether you're drawn to the stoic resilience of Marcus Aurelius, the piercing clarity of Nietzsche, or the tranquil depths of Buddhist thought, this journey speaks to the heart of what it means to live deeply. At Ancient Wisdom, we bridge the ancient and the present, offering a space for reflection amid life's ceaseless rush. This video is not just a discourse, it's an invitation to pause, to listen to the whispers of your own spirit. Picture a life where the din of the crowd fades, replaced by the steady rhythm of your own breath, your own thoughts. Over the next 500 words, we'll lay the groundwork for a deeper dive into how experience reshapes our relationship with solitude, transforming it into a crucible for emotional intelligence, mental fortitude, and philosophical insight. From the bustling streets to the quiet hearth, we'll traverse tales of those who've walked this path, drivers, poets, thinkers who discovered in solitude not loneliness, but liberation. For those seeking life lessons, stoic resilience, or existential clarity, this is your sanctuary. Join us as we peel back the layers of human behavior and societal norms, revealing the treasure beneath, a love for solitude born of wisdom. Stay with us, for in these reflections, you might glimpse your own quiet strength, an echo of a soul refined by time. The ancients taught us that life is a vast tapestry, each thread spun from moments of joy, sorrow, triumph, and defeat. The more one engages with this intricate weave, the more one feels an inexplicable pull towards solitude. Why does this longing arise? Why do those who have tasted the breadth of existence, its fleeting pleasures and enduring pains, seek not the cacophony of the collective, but the stillness of their own presence? This is no mere withdrawal from the world. It is an intentional act of cultivation, attending to the inner garden where the seeds of wisdom take root. Across epics and empires, from the stoic meditations of Marcus Aurelius to the poetic reveries of Shugansi, the solitary path has been celebrated as the province of the enlightened. In this exploration, we weave together philosophy, psychology, and human narrative to illuminate why experience begets a love for being alone, a love that is neither desolate nor detached, but vibrantly alive. Consider the observation of a Beijing University professor: those who traverse life alone often embody the noblest virtues. They turn away from petty squabbles and idle gossip, choosing instead a life of quiet focus and inner richness. Imagine them in their sanctuary spaces they've crafted to mirror their essence, preparing simple meals, savoring a film, tending to plants, or immersing themselves in the pages of a book. These are not acts of seclusion but rituals of presence, a communion with the self that the seasoned soul craves. Through years of navigating life's tempests, they've come to see that all things in this world, joys, sorrows, triumphs, carry their own boundaries. In solitude, they find a harbor to process this truth, to gaze upon existence with eyes tempered by time. Such individuals are treasures as companions, for their depth invites connections of substance, not the fleeting chatter of the masses, but bonds forged in mutual reverence. This affinity for solitude marks the germination of wisdom, a quiet defiance of the immaturity that clings to ceaseless striving. To persist in conflict or clamor for recognition within the crowd reveals a spirit yet to mature, a heart enripy in its understanding. Picture to dwellings, one teeming with voices, shared spaces, and daily frictions, the other a realm of autonomy, where one moves freely, unshackled by external demands. For those seasoned by life, the choice is unmistakable. Relationships remain essential tools for work, growth, and survival, but upon crossing the threshold of home, they shed the superfluous, declining hollow invitations and petty dramas. Life's complexity or simplicity hinges on this discernment, the ability to sift through the noise and embrace what aligns with one's truth. As the world accelerates, the wise seek spaces of calm restaurants with fewer patrons, wider seats, and melodies soft as a whisper. Here, they nurture their spirit, acknowledging that all things, including their own existence, are finite and worthy of reverence. At some pivotal moment, the experienced soul grasps a liberating axiom: the self is the sole domain we can truly master. Others, their actions, their intentions lie beyond our reach. A bus driver I once knew, after 3 decades of ferrying passengers without incident, embodied this realization. To us, his passengers, he was a pillar of dependability, his work an apparent ease. Yet one day confided, "I no longer have the courage to drive. The road has made me timid." "Press for an explanation," he said. "Experience has shown me every kind of person, every peril. It's like walking a tightrope." His words unveil a profound truth. The more one witnesses of humanity, the more one discerns its unpredictability. True confidants are scarce. Those both able and willing to aid in times of need are scarcer still. Genuine empathy, though a gift, is rarely absolute. Thus, the seasoned embrace solitude not as a punishment, but as a shield, a space to fortify themselves against life's caprices. Shuganzi once proclaimed, "He who knows how to be alone is truly noble." This nobility stems not from aloofness, but from an embrace of our inherent singularity. Born unique, we each tread a solitary path within the collective. To feel alone at times is inevitable, yet the wise transform this solitude into strength. They wield their inner freedom to counter the chill of passing years, finding joy in their own presence. These souls are far from ordinary. They bear 3 defining traits: independence and confidence, sincerity and candor, and an unwavering pursuit of dreams. First, independence and confidence distinguish them. An ancient saying holds that those who flourish alone possess profound knowledge and insight, born of self-assurance rather than arrogance. They cherish solitary moments not from social inadequacy, but from a luminous strength, a refusal to conform to ill-fitting molds. Society may misread them as reclusive or timid, but their solitude is a testament to their trust in themselves. Women who walk this path know that thriving in a turbulent world demands self-reliance, not dependence on others. Men, too, recognize that true flourishing requires courage and resolve, honed in quiet reflection. They face life's offerings, both gifts and burdens, with equanimity, their maturity forged in stillness. Second, sincerity and candor define their essence. Vietnamese writer Nguyen noted, "When one ceases to argue or appease, growing quieter and more reserved, they've glimpsed human nature's core." Those who favor solitude shun duplicity, offering instead an unvarnished honesty. They harbor no ill will, spread no rumors, and seek no favor through flattery. While the desperate crowd clamors for belonging, masking their fears with pretense, the solitary soul rejects such facades. They forge connections not for gain but for resonance, valuing quality over quantity, a courteous distance when needed, a heartfelt presence when it matters. Third, they are dreamers with purpose. Experience reveals that energy is finite. Squandered on revelry, it leaves little for growth. Those who choose solitude channel their focus into aspirations, sacrificing fleeting pleasures for enduring fulfillment. The bustling road may dazzle briefly, but it often breeds complacency. The solitary path, though lonely, yields the deep satisfaction of achievement. In this stillness, blessings emerge not as external rewards, but as the quiet strength to craft a meaningful life. Beyond these traits, solitude offers a vast canvas for self-discovery. Science affirms its merits. Time alone sharpens focus, bolsters resilience, and clarifies purpose. Yet balance is essential. Excessive isolation risks despair. The question persists, why do some thrive in solitude while others falter? 12 traits illuminate this mystery. First, introversion empowers them, not as frailty but as a wellspring of creativity. Second, independence drives their self-sufficiency, unshaken by external sway. Third, they revel in solitary pursuits, reading, walking, dining, unfazed by others' judgments. Fourth, they treasure time, wielding it with intention. Fifth, self-reliance sustains them through turmoil. Sixth, their thoughts run deep, distilled in quiet observation. Seventh, they prioritize meaningful bonds over fleeting ties. Eighth, self-love heals their wounds. Ninth, they sidestep conflict, guarding their peace. 10th, clear boundaries shield them from toxicity. 11th, self-awareness guides their choices. 12th, composure steadies them amid chaos. Yet solitude's power transcends personal traits. It is a philosophical stance. Stoicism, embodied by Marcus Aurelius, teaches us to master the self amid life's tempests. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence challenges us to embrace each moment as eternally ours, solitude included. Epictetus reminds us that only our perceptions lie within our control, a truth best grasped alone. These thinkers reveal solitude as a forge for resilience, a mirror for existential clarity. In a world of ceaseless distraction, it becomes a radical act of mindfulness, a refusal to let societal norms dictate our worth. Consider the practical wisdom of subtraction. The sage subtracts excess information, needless worries, unchecked desires to distill life to its essence. In an age of overload, this clarity is revolutionary. Information abounds, yet much is noise, worries multiply, yet most are trivial, desires entice, yet fulfillment lies in restraint. By paring away the superfluous, the solitary soul finds freedom not in accumulation, but in simplicity. This echoes Buddhist mindfulness, to live fully present, unburdened by the past or future. Seriousness, too, marks these individuals. They approach life with diligence, steadying their homes, mastering their craft, cherishing their passions not out of duty, but love. A clean space mirrors a clear mind, focused work yields progress, personal joys sustain the spirit. Such rigor commands respect, drawing others near not by force, but by quiet charisma. At life's midpoint, emotional stability emerges as the ultimate nourishment. Like the wildebeest felled not by a fly's bite but by its own frenzy, we risk through and through unchecked passion. Stability fosters youthfulness, energy, and grace, qualities that radiate outward, enhancing all we touch. Finally, wealth, material or spiritual, hinges on three pivots: the mind's richness, the breadth of vision, and the positivity of spirit. A delivery man who traded idle hours for poetry rose to renown. A worker who embraced learning soared past his peers. A merchant who shunned complaints withered. Time invested wisely, vision cast far, and grievances transformed into growth, these pave the path to abundance. Let us linger on this notion of solitude as a philosophical cornerstone. The Stoics, with their emphasis on inner dominion, offer ends through which to view this preference for alonences. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, implores us to retreat within ourselves, to find a citadel impervious to external tumult. Men seek retreats for themselves, houses in the country, seashores, mountains, he writes, but it is within your power to retreat into yourself whenever you wish. This retreat is not a flight from responsibility but a reclamation of agency, a space where the soul can breathe freely, unencumbered by the expectations of others. For the experienced, this inner sanctum becomes a refuge, a place to sift through the sediment of life's lessons and extract their gold. Nietzsche, too, elevates solitude to a noble pursuit. His concept of eternal recurrence, the idea that we must live each moment as if it were to recur, infinitely casts solitude in a radiant light. To stand alone, to affirm one's existence without the crutch of external validation, is to embrace life in its fullest measure. The seasoned soul, having witnessed the transience of human affairs, finds in solitude a stage to rehearse this affirmation, to ask, "Would I live this again?" The answer, forged in silent reflection, becomes a testament to their resilience, a declaration of their sovereignty over fate. Epictetus, another Stoic luminary, underscores this autonomy. "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he asserts. Realize this and you will find strength. For those who have journeyed far, this truth resonates deeply. The world is a tempest of variables, people, circumstances, fortunes, none of which we can wholly command. Yet in solitude, we wield dominion over our perceptions, shaping our responses with deliberation rather than impulse. This is the alchemy of experience. It teaches us that while we cannot control the storm, we can steady the helm within. Buddhist philosophy offers a complementary perspective, framing solitude as a path to mindfulness. The Buddha himself sought enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree, alone with his breath and his thoughts. This act of withdrawal was not rejection but revelation, a stripping away of distraction to uncover the nature of suffering and the path to its cessation. For the experienced, solitude mirrors this quest, providing a space to observe the mind's ceaseless chatter, to disentangle from its illusions, and to rest in the present. Here, the love for being alone becomes a practice of liberation, a shedding of attachments that no longer serve. Kant, with his rigorous rationalism, might argue that solitude is the crucible of moral autonomy. To act according to reason, free from the sway of societal pressures, requires a clarity best found in isolation. The seasoned soul, having navigated the moral ambiguities of human interaction, turns inward to refine this autonomy, to align their actions with a universal law born of reflection rather than conformity. In this light, solitude is not merely a preference but a duty and ethical stance against the tyranny of the crowd. Epicurus, the champion of tranquil pleasure, offers yet another vantage. He extolled the virtues of a simple life, one unburdened by excessive ambition or social clamor. For him, solitude was a garden where one could cultivate a peace of mind through modest joys and contemplation. The experienced, having tasted the hollow promises of excess, find in this simplicity a resonance with Epicurus's vision. Their solitary moments, cooking, reading, tending to nature, are not acts of withdrawal but celebrations of sufficiency, a return to what truly sustains. These philosophical threads weave a tapestry of understanding, revealing solitude as both a refuge and a forge. It is a refuge from the noise that threatens to drown our essence, a place where the soul can rest and replenish. Yet it is also a forge, where the raw materials of experience, pain, joy, loss, triumph are hammered into wisdom, resilience, and clarity. The seasoned soul does not flee to solitude out of weakness, they seek it out of strength, recognizing its power to refine what life has bestowed. Let us deepen this exploration with the lens of psychology. Behavioral science affirms that solitude, when chosen, enhances emotional intelligence. In the absence of external voices, we learn to listen to our own, to name our emotions, to trace their origins, to temper their excesses. The bus driver's confession of timidity was not a lament, but a self-aware acknowledgement, a product of years spent observing humanity from his perch. This capacity for introspection, honed in solitude, equips us to navigate relationships with greater empathy and discernment, for we come to know others only as deeply as we know ourselves. Social dynamics too play a role. The experienced have seen the masks people wear, the posturing, the deceit, the fleeting alliances. They've witnessed how rarely others extend a hand in genuine aid, how seldom empathy transcends self-interest. This is not cynicism but realism, a recognition that the crowd often demands conformity at the expense of authenticity. Solitude becomes a sanctuary from this pressure, a space to shed the masks and stand as one truly is. Here, the seasoned soul finds freedom not in isolation, but in integrity. Mental resilience emerges as another fruit of this solitude. The Stoics knew this well. Adversity is inevitable, but our response is ours to shape. Alone, we rehearse this resilience, facing our fears, doubts, and regrets without distraction. The delivery man who memorized poetry during lunch breaks did not merely pass the time. He built a fortress of the mind, a bulwark against despair. When recognition came, it was not the prize but the process that defined him, a process born in solitary dedication. Existentialists cast solitude as the ground of meaning. For Sartre, to be alone is to confront our freedom, to bear the weight of crafting our own purpose. The experienced, having brushed against life's absurdity, embrace this burden in solitude. They do not seek meaning in the approval of others, but in the quiet labor of self-definition. This is the courage of Nietzsche's Be-Our Mensch, the resolve to create value where none is given, a resolve sharpened in the crucible of being alone. Mindfulness practices, rooted in both Eastern and Western traditions, amplify this effect. To sit in solitude, to breathe, to observe the ebb and flow of thought, is to anchor oneself in the now. The seasoned soul, having lived through past and future's illusions, finds in this practice a return to reality. It is not escapism but engagement, a stripping away of what clouds the present, a reclamation of what endures. Let us pause to consider the societal norms that solitude defies. In a culture that equates connection with worth, to choose aloneness is a radical act. The experienced see through this illusion, recognizing that quantity of ties does not guarantee quality of life. They've danced at the edges of the crowd, tasted its promises, and found them wanting. Solitude, then, is not rejection but discernment, a refusal to let the world's metrics define their soul. The narrative of the merchant who clung to complaints illustrates this. As commerce shifted online, he railed against change rather than adapt, his bitterness a shackle of his own making. Contrast this with the worker who sought learning abroad, broadening his vision to seize opportunity. The difference lies not in circumstance but in choice. Solitude enabled the latter to reflect, to strategize, to grow, while the former's refusal to be alone with his thoughts trapped him in stagnation. This brings us to the wisdom of subtraction, a principle both practical and profound. The experienced soul learns to let go of noise, of worry, of excess, distilling life to its essence. In an age where information floods every corner, they sift through the deluge, retaining only what enriches. Worries, too, are pared down. As Epictetus might counsel, we torment ourselves over what we cannot change, when peace lies in releasing what lies beyond our grasp. Desires, unchecked, become chains. Epicurus's simplicity reminds us that true joy needs little. This subtraction is not loss but liberation, a clearing of the clutter to reveal the soul's true shape. Seriousness, too, defines this solitary path. Those who love solitude approach life with a quiet trigger, tidying their homes not as chore but as ritual, a mirror to their ordered minds, pursuing their craft with focus, knowing mastery lies in persistence, nurturing passions that sustain their spirit from poetry to plants. This diligence is not sternness but devotion, a love for life expressed in discipline. It draws others near, not through ostentation, but through the magnetic pull of authenticity. At life's midpoint, emotional stability emerges as the soul's greatest sustenance. The wild abyss tale is a parable. It was not the fly's bite but its own panic that felt it. So it is with us. Our emotions, unchecked, become our undoing. The seasoned in solitude learn to steady this inner tide, to greet anger with patience, sorrow with grace. This stability preserves their youth not merely of body, but of spirit, infusing them with energy to meet each day. It is a gift cultivated alone, a stillness that radiates outward, softening their presence in the world. Wealth, whether of spirit or substance, rests on three pillars: the mind's richness, the expanse of vision, and the buoyancy of spirit. The delivery man who wove poetry into his days enriched his intellect. His solitary hours illume for brilliance. The worker who ventured abroad stretched his gaze beyond the immediate, his solitude a compass for ambition. The merchant, mired in lament, shrank his spirit, his refusal to reflect a barrier to growth. Time well spent, vision far cast, and grievances turned to grit. These, honed in solitude, pave the path to abundance. Let us linger on this interplay of philosophy and practice. Stoicism offers a framework. To retreat within is to claim our power, to stand firm amid life's flux. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence bids us affirm our solitude, to live it as if it were eternal. Kant's autonomy finds its echo in the solitary soul's refusal to bow to the crowd. Epicurus's garden blooms in their quiet joys. Buddhist mindfulness anchors them in the now. Together, these threads weave a vision of solitude as sovereignty, a realm where the experienced soul reigns, not over others but over itself. This sovereignty is not static. It evolves with each reflection, each solitary hour. The season do not merely endure solitude, they embrace it as a companion, a teacher, a mirror. They've seen the world's limits, the fragility of trust, the rarity of aid, the illusion of permanence, and in solitude they make peace with these truths. It is a peace hard won, a clarity earned through years of wrestling with life's riddles. Consider the bus driver once more. His timidity was not weakness but wisdom, a recognition of risk honed by decades on the road. In solitude, he processed this, weighing his courage against his caution, choosing peace over peril. Such is the work of the seasoned, to sit with their truths, to distill them into strength. This is not retreat but reckoning, a quiet forging of the self. The delivery man's poetry offers another lens. Amid the grind of parcels and deadlines, he carved out solitude to weave words, to touch the sublime. His triumph was not the prize but the practice, a testament to solitude's power to transform the mundane into the eternal. Here, Nietzsche's affirmation rings true: to live each moment as if it recurs forever is to find beauty in the ordinary, a beauty the seas and soul seeks alone. The worker abroad, too, embodies this. His solitude was not isolation but preparation, a space to envision beyond the factory's walls, to seize a future others overlooked. Kant might nod approvingly. This is reason at work, autonomy shaped in silence, a vision unswayed by the crowd's nearsightedness. Even the merchant, in his failure, teaches us. His refusal to be alone with his thoughts, to reflect, to adapt, doomed him to repeat his errors. Solitude, for the experienced, is not optional. It is the crucible where lessons are forged into action, where the past informs the future. This interplay of solitude and experience is a dance of subtraction and addition. The seasoned subtract noise to hear their own voice, worries to find their peace, desires to know their sufficiency. Yet they add depth to their understanding, resilience to their spirit, purpose to their days. It is a balance of release and refinement, a rhythm the experienced master in their quiet hours. Philosophically, this aligns with existentialism's call to authenticity. Sartre bids us face our freedom, to craft meaning in a world without blueprint. The seasoned in solitude do just this, confronting their existence, stripping away pretense, building a life true to their core. It is a solitary task, for no other can walk this path for us. Psychologically, it fosters emotional intelligence. Alone, we name our joys and pains, learning to temper them with reason. The bus driver's calm confession, the delivery man's poetic resolve, the worker's strategic patience, these are fruits of solitary reflection, skills honed in silence that ripple into the world. Socially, it defies the tyranny of connection. The experienced know that belonging need not mean blending, that true bonds thrive on mutual respect, not constant presence. Solitude becomes their filter, sifting the gold of friendship from the dross of obligation. Practically, it is a strategy for resilience. The Stoics rehearsed misfortune in their minds, preparing for life's blows. The seasoned, in solitude, do the same, facing their fears, rehearsing their responses, emerging unbowed. It is a quiet heroism, a strength invisible to the crowd. Spiritually, it is a return to essence. Buddhist monks sit in silence to pierce the veil of illusion, the seize and sit alone to pierce the veil of their own lives. It is not asceticism but awakening, a stripping away of what obscures the soul. This love for solitude, then, is multifaceted, a philosophical stance, a psychological tool, a social statement, a practical habit, a spiritual quest. For the experienced, it is all these and more, a homecoming, a reckoning, a renewal. They do not flee to it, they choose it, for in its embrace, they find not just survival, but sovereignty. Let us extend this reflection across cultures. In Jainism, solitude is a path to non-attachment, a shedding of worldly ties to touch the eternal. The seasoned soul, having seen desire's fleeting grip, echoes this in their quiet moments, releasing what binds, embracing what frees. In Hinduism, the sadhu retreats to the forest, seeking Brahman in isolation, the experienced retreat within, seeking truth amid life's chaos. These parallels reveal solitude's universal pull, a thread stitching humanity's diverse wisdoms into a single cloth. Modernity challenges this. Screens beckon, voices clamor, connection is currency. Yet the experienced resist, not out of laudism, but discernment. They've seen technology's promise of ease, of reach, yet know its peril, a drowning of the self in endless noise. Solitude becomes their counterweight, a reclaiming of silence in a world that forgets its worth. This resistance is not passive. It is an act of creation, carving space for thought, for feeling, for being. The delivery man crafted poetry, the worker crafted opportunity, the season craft themselves. Solitude is their studio, their forge, their garden, a place where experience is not merely endured but transformed. Let us circle back to the ancients. Shugenzi's noble solitary stands apart not from pride, but from fullness, a soul so replete it needs no external prop. Marcus Aurelius's inner citadel withstands all sieges, for it is built of reflection. Nietzsche's eternal yes resounds in the quiet, a solitary affirmation of life's whole. These voices, spanning centuries, sing a single truth. Solitude is the sea's and soul's symphony, a melody of wisdom played on the strings of experience. Here at Ancient Wisdom we ventured deep into the heart of solitude, exploring why those tempered by life's fires find in it a faithful companion. From Marcus Aurelius's stoic resilience to Nietzsche's existential depth, we've uncovered how experience carves a space for reflection, a sanctuary where wisdom, emotional control, and philosophical insight take root. Solitude is not a void, it is a vessel, brimming with the potential for self-mastery and meaning. This journey, rich with stories and philosophies, reveals a timeless truth: the more we live, the more we seek the quiet to make sense of that living. It is a call to subtract the trivial, to steady the heart, to enrich the mind, a map to a life examined and embraced. We invite you to dwell on these reflections. Share your thoughts below, comment 1 if this strikes a chord, 2 if it misses the mark. Your voice shapes ancient wisdom, guiding the paths we tread together. Like, share, and subscribe to join our tribe of seekers where ancient insights light modern lives. Next, don't miss our discussion with Sophia and Lucas, who'll share their own takes on Solitude's quiet power right after this. Thank you for your time, a treasure we hold dear. Until we meet again, may you find wisdom in your own stillness.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going to be doing a deep dive into something today that I think you'll find pretty interesting, and that is the idea of solitude, and specifically how it relates to experience. So the source material we're looking at is a book called The Experienced Soul. And it's been really fascinating reading this because it poses this question of why people who've really lived full lives, people who've seen it all, they've experienced the highs and lows, the ups and downs, often find themselves drawn to solitude, not as a retreat, but like as a homecoming, like they've almost like they've discovered some kind of secret source of strength. What are your initial thoughts on that?
That's a great point. It does seem kind of counterintuitive, right? Like you'd think that the more life experience you have, the more you'd want to be, surrounded by people and always out there in the mix of things. But this book seems to suggest the opposite almost, like experience might actually lead you to crave more time alone.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the more you experience, the more you realize you need time to process it all. And I thought this example they gave in the book was so interesting. They talk about this bus driver who, after 30 years on the job, driving all around the city, dealing with all kinds of people every day, he found that all that interaction and unpredictability had actually made him more cautious. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to the limits of what we can control, even with experience. Like you can learn so much from life, you can gain wisdom and insight, but ultimately you can't control how other people are going to act or react.
Yeah.
So solitude, I guess, becomes this space where you can kind of work through those hard-won lessons.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to escape from life, but to engage with it maybe more intentionally.
Yeah.
Like it's on your terms.
Right. It's like you're not shutting the world out. You're just being more selective about what you let in. And one of the things that really surprised me about this book was how it talked about like all the benefits of solitude. It linked it to things like independence and sincerity, and even like the ability to focus on your dreams and pursue them. What's your take on that?
Oh, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And there's actually a lot of research that supports those claims. Like studies have shown that spending time in solitude can actually boost creativity and problem-solving skills. It's like, like it gives your mind space to wander, to make connections that it couldn't when it was constantly being bombarded with stimuli.
So it's not just about, feeling good or de-stressing. There are like real cognitive benefits to solitude.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like a mental gym.
You like that.
But instead of building muscles, you're building focus and resilience and emotional intelligence. I got to admit, I was a little skeptical about that whole emotional intelligence thing at first. But the way they explain it in this book, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's fascinating how it works. When you're not constantly reacting to other people's emotions, you can actually get to know your own emotions a lot better. You become more self-aware and better at regulating your feelings. And that self-awareness is crucial, for navigating relationships. Especially you gain more experience and encounter a wider range of personalities.
It's like you're developing a more nuanced understanding of human nature, both your own and others. So you're not just retreating from the world, you're actually equipping yourself to engage with it more effectively. And it's funny how this idea of solitude being like this strength-building practice has deep roots in various philosophies and spiritual traditions.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, this concept of subtraction they talk about, deliberately removing things from your life to make space for what truly matters. That's not just a modern self-help trend. It's an idea that's been explored by philosophers and spiritual thinkers for centuries. It's about prioritizing quality over quantity, whether that's in your relationships, your possessions, or even your thoughts.
I really like that idea of subtraction. Can you tell me a little more about how that plays out in like a practical sense?
Sure, yeah. They give this example of a merchant, who refused to adapt to the changing times. He was clinging to these outdated methods, and ultimately his business failed. And they contrast that with this worker who used his solitude to learn new skills, and he ended up thriving. He was able to adapt and grow. And it really makes you think about who you want to be. Do you want to be the one stuck in your ways or the one who uses quiet time to grow and evolve?
Yeah, that's such a powerful distinction. It's like a fork in the road, Do you let experience make you rigid and resistant to change? Or do you use it as fuel for personal growth?
Right.
And it makes me think about how important it is to be intentional about how we use our time and energy. Speaking of energy, the book also talks a lot about how crucial emotional stability is, especially as we gain more experience and face more complex challenges.
Yeah.
They use this analogy
Yeah, I remember that.
of a wheeled beast that gets spooked and runs itself to death. And they're saying our own anxieties can do the same thing to us if we don't learn to manage them. So how does solitude factor into that?
I think of solitude like hitting the reset button on your nervous system. It allows you to step away from the constant stimulation and stress of daily life and find that calm center within yourself.
Right. And that ties back into this idea of wealth that they talk about in the book. It's not just about money. It's about cultivating like a rich mind, a broad vision, and a positive spirit. It's almost like solitude is a treasure map leading you to these inner riches.
I love that.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to put it. And what's so fascinating is that this connection between solitude and inner strength, it's not just like a recent discovery. It's been recognized across cultures and throughout history. It's like woven into the fabric of so many different philosophical traditions.
Oh, okay, now we're getting into the really interesting stuff. I love how this book connects the dots between modern psychology and ancient wisdom. So tell me a little bit about like which philosophical perspectives does the book bring up?
Well, they touch on quite a few, but they spend a good amount of time exploring Stoicism.
Ah, the Stoics. Always a good place to start when you're talking about inner strength and resilience. What do they have to say about solitude?
Well, basically, the Stoics believed that by practicing solitude, you're essentially preparing for battle. Not a physical battle, but a mental one. You're strengthening your mind to withstand any challenge, any adversity that life throws your way.
So it's like building that inner citadel, that
Yeah.
mental fortress that can't be breached by outside forces. I love that imagery.
Me too. And one of the most famous Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, he wrote extensively about this idea of retreating into ourselves whenever we need to,
Yeah.
to kind of regroup and recharge. And it's not about shirking responsibility, but it's about reclaiming our sense of control over our own thoughts and emotions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you're constantly bombarded by external stimuli, it's easy to lose sight of your own inner compass, right? So solitude becomes a way to recalibrate, to reconnect with your core values. What other philosophical perspectives does the book highlight?
Well, they talk about Nietzsche, and he had this fascinating concept of eternal recurrence, which is essentially the idea that you should live each moment as if it were to happen over and over again for all eternity.
Wow, that's a pretty intense concept.
Yeah.
But I can see how solitude would be essential for that kind of mindful living. Like if you're always distracted, always caught up in the whirlwind of external events, how can you truly be present in each moment?
That's the point exactly. Solitude allows you to savor each experience, to really ask yourself, would I choose to live this moment again? And it's a powerful way to filter out the noise and focus on what truly matters.
It's almost like solitude gives you the space to step outside the flow of time and really examine your life from a different perspective.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to another interesting perspective. Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher, he really emphasized the power of perception. He has this famous quote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength."
I love that quote. It's so empowering. It reminds us that we always have a choice in how we respond to things. Even if we can't control what happens to us, it seems like solitude would be a really important tool for cultivating that kind of mental fortitude.
Oh, absolutely. Solitude gives you the space to step back from a situation, to observe your own thoughts and emotions without judgment, and then choose a response that aligns with your values.
It's like taking a time out from the game to strategize, to regroup before jumping back in. Now, what about Eastern philosophies? Do they have anything to say about solitude?
Of course. They talk about Buddhism a little bit and how the Buddha himself achieved enlightenment while meditating alone under the Bodhi tree. So this idea that solitude can be a pathway to wisdom and self-discovery, it's definitely not limited to Western thought.
Yeah, it's like this universal human truth that keeps resurfacing across different cultures and throughout history. It's pretty remarkable when you think about it. So what other philosophers did they mention?
Well, they even brought up Kant, who's not exactly known for being warm and fuzzy.
Right.
But even he, with his emphasis on reason and morality, saw solitude as crucial for developing moral autonomy. It's about being able to think for yourself, free from the pressures of societal expectations.
Right. It's like if you're never unplugged from the constant stream of opinions and influences, how can you ever truly know what you believe? Solitude allows you to tune out the noise and listen to that inner voice of conscience.
Exactly.
And they talk about Epicurus, too.
Yeah, they did. And he might seem like an unlikely advocate for solitude because he's often associated with pleasure and indulgence.
Right.
But he also believed in seeking tranquility and finding joy in simple things. And for him, solitude was like this garden where you could cultivate peace of mind.
So it seems like whether you're looking for strength or wisdom or moral clarity or just plain old peace and quiet, solitude has something to offer everyone.
Especially for those who've really experienced life, who understand that true fulfillment often comes from within, not from external validation or fleeting pleasures.
Right. It's like the more you experience, the more you realize that the answers you're seeking are often found in those quiet moments of reflection. It's not about escaping the world, but about going deeper into yourself. And, speaking of going deeper, I was really struck by how the book talked about like the tangible benefits of solitude, like how it boosts emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
It's not just about feeling good or finding peace. Solitude actually rewires your brain in ways that make you more adaptable, more resilient, more in tune with yourself and others. Like I remember them talking about how when you're not constantly bombarded by other people's emotions and opinions, you have the space to really get to know your own.
Right. It's like you said earlier, you're developing a more nuanced understanding of human nature. You're becoming more self-aware, better able to regulate your emotions, and that makes you more empathetic and compassionate.
Yeah.
In your interactions with others.
It's almost like solitude is a training ground for better relationships. You learn to navigate your own inner landscape, which then equips you to navigate the complexities of interpersonal dynamics. And remember that bus driver we talked about earlier, it seemed like he had this incredible self-awareness, this ability to recognize the impact his job was having on him.
Yeah, he did.
And that kind of self-awareness is gold when it comes to making conscious choices about your life, your career, your relationships. It's about being the author of your own story, not just a character reacting to external events.
Like that.
And it's interesting how the book points out that the more experience you have, the more you might realize that people aren't always what they seem. You start to see through the facades, the masks, the social games.
Yeah, you do. You really do.
And solitude allows you to do that same thing with yourself, right?
I think so. It's like that saying, you don't really know someone until you've lived with them. But in a way, solitude allows you to live with yourself and get to know the real you, the one beneath all the roles and expectations. And that self-knowledge, I think, makes you more discerning in your relationships with others. You're less likely to be swayed by superficial charm or get caught up in drama.
So it's not about becoming a hermit and shutting everyone out. It's about being more intentional with your connections. You're choosing quality over quantity, depth over superficiality.
Exactly.
And it all ties back to that idea of mental resilience that we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
The Stoics believed that practicing solitude was like preparing for battle.
Yeah, like that delivery man who memorized poetry during his breaks.
Right.
He's using those moments of solitude to build mental fortitude.
Exactly.
He understood that true strength comes from within, not from external validation or fleeting distractions. It's about cultivating that inner wellspring of resilience that can sustain you through any challenge.
It's so interesting how solitude, which we often associate with weakness or loneliness, can actually be a source of so much power. It's almost like a hidden superpower.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It definitely challenges our assumptions about success and happiness. It makes you question whether constant connection and external validation are truly fulfilling, or whether true contentment lies in those quiet moments of self-discovery.
And speaking of challenging assumptions, I remember the book also mentioned how the more experience we gain in life, the more we might actually seek out solitude. Like it's a natural progression. The more we live, the more we crave that time to reflect and make sense of it all.
Absolutely. It's almost like you're integrating those experiences into your being, allowing them to shape your perspective and inform your choices. And that requires a certain amount of stillness, a stepping back from the constant stream of information and interactions.
Yeah, and the book has this great line, the more we live, the more we might seek the quiet to make sense of that living. It's like solitude becomes a necessary counterbalance to the richness and complexity of life.
I love that quote. It really captures the essence of what we've been talking about. That solitude isn't about rejecting life, but about enriching it, deepening it, savoring it.
Right. It's about taking those raw ingredients of experience and transforming them into something meaningful, something wise. So for our listeners who are maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by the pace of modern life, by the constant demands on their time and attention, what would you say is the key takeaway from this deep dive?
I think the most important message is this. Don't be afraid of solitude. Don't see it as a sign of weakness or loneliness. Embrace those quiet moments. Explore them. You might be surprised by what you discover about yourself and the world around you.
It's like giving yourself permission to unplug from the matrix, to step off the hamster wheel for a bit and just be. And that doesn't necessarily mean going on a silent retreat or living as a hermit.
Right, that's a great point. Solitude doesn't have to be about physical isolation. It's a state of mind, a conscious choice to disconnect from the noise and reconnect with yourself. You can find solitude in a crowded room if you know how to cultivate that inner stillness.
It's about creating those mental and emotional boundaries that allow you to recharge, to process, to simply exist without the pressure to perform or produce. So our final thought for you today is this. What does your experience tell you about solitude? Is it something you seek out, or does the idea make you uncomfortable? Maybe it's time to challenge your assumptions and give it a try. See what treasures you unearth within those quiet spaces.
Yeah, they believe that by practicing solitude, you're, like preparing for battle. Not a physical battle, of course, but a mental one. It's about strengthening your mind to withstand any challenge, any adversity that life throws at you.
So it's like building that inner citadel, that mental fortress. That can't be breached by, outside forces. I love that.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And one of the most famous Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, he wrote a lot about this idea of retreating into ourselves, whenever we need to kind of like regroup and recharge. And it was very clear that it's not about shirking our responsibilities, more about reclaiming our sense of control over the thoughts and emotions.
Yeah, because if you're constantly bombarded by external stimuli, it's easy to lose sight of your own inner compass. So solitude becomes this way to kind of recalibrate, to reconnect with your core values. So besides the Stoics, what other philosophical perspectives does the book talk about?
Well, they mentioned Nietzsche, and he had this really interesting concept of eternal recurrence, which is basically the idea that you should live each moment as if it were to happen, over and over again for all eternity.
Whoa, that's a pretty intense concept.
Yeah.
But I can see how solitude would be essential for that kind of mindful living. Because, if you're always distracted, always caught up in the whirlwind of everything that's happening around you, how can you truly be present in each moment, right?
Exactly. Solitude allows you to really savor each experience, to step back and ask yourself, would I choose to live this moment again? And it's a really powerful way to filter out the noise and focus on what truly matters.
It's like solitude gives you the space to step outside the flow of time for a minute and really examine your life from a different perspective.
And, that brings us to another interesting perspective. Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher, he was really big on the power of perception. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength.
I love that quote. It's so empowering. It reminds us that we always have a choice in how we respond to things, even if we can't control what happens to us. It seems like solitude would be a really important tool for cultivating that kind of mental fortitude.
Solitude gives you the space to step back from a situation and observe your own thoughts and emotions without judgment, and to choose a response that aligns with your values.
Right. It's like taking a time out from the game to strategize, to regroup before jumping back in. Now, what about Eastern philosophies? Do they have anything to say about solitude?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They talk about Buddhism and how the Buddha himself achieved enlightenment while meditating alone under the Bodhi tree. So this idea that solitude can be a pathway to wisdom and self-discovery, it's definitely not limited to Western thought.
It's like a universal human truth that keeps resurfacing across different cultures and throughout history. Pretty remarkable. So besides the Stoics, who else did they mention?
Well, they even bring up Kant. And he's not really known for being like warm and fuzzy or anything.
Right.
But even he, with his emphasis on reason and morality, saw solitude as crucial for developing moral autonomy. It's about being able to think for yourself, free from the pressures of what society expects of you.
Right, because if you're never unplugged from the constant stream of opinions and influences, how can you ever truly know what you believe, right? Solitude allows you to kind of tune out all that noise and listen to your inner voice of conscience.
Exact.
And wasn't Epicurus another one they brought up?
Oh, yeah, he was. And he might seem like an unlikely advocate for solitude because he's so closely associated with pleasure and indulgence.
Yeah.
But he also really believed in seeking tranquility and finding joy in simple things. And for him, solitude was like a garden where you could cultivate peace of mind.
So it sounds like whether you're looking for strength or wisdom or moral clarity or just peace and quiet, solitude seems to have something to offer everyone.
I think so, especially for people who have really experienced life.
Right.
Who understand that true fulfillment often comes from within, not from external validation or fleeting pleasures.
Right. It's like the more you experience, the more you realize the answers you're looking for. are often found in those quiet moments of reflection. It's not about escaping the world, but about going deeper into yourself. And speaking of going deeper, I was really struck by how the book talked about the benefits of solitude, like how it can actually boost your emotional intelligence.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
It's not just about feeling good or finding peace. It's like solitude actually rewires your brain in ways that make you more adaptable, more resilient, more in tune with yourself and others. I remember them talking about how when you're not constantly being bombarded by other people's emotions and their opinions, you have more space to really get to know your own.
Right.
It's like you said earlier, you're developing a more nuanced understanding of human nature. You're becoming more self-aware, better able to regulate your emotions. And that makes you more empathetic and compassionate in how you interact with other people.
It's almost like solitude is a training ground for better relationships. You learn to navigate your own inner landscape. And that equips you to navigate the complexities of, interpersonal dynamics. Remember that bus driver we were talking about? It seemed like he had developed this incredible self-awareness, this ability to recognize the impact his job was having on him.
Yeah, he did.
And that kind of self-awareness is so valuable. When it comes to making conscious choices about your life, your career, your relationships, it's about being the author of your own story, not just a character reacting to events.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's interesting how the book points out that the more experience you have, the more you might realize that people aren't always what they seem. You start to see through the facades, the masks, the social games that people play.
And in a way, solitude allows you to do that same thing with yourself.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's like that saying, you don't really know someone until you've lived with them. But solitude allows you to live with yourself and get to know the real you, the one beneath all the roles and expectations. And that self-knowledge, I think, makes you more discerning in your relationships with others. You're less likely to be swayed by superficial charm or get caught up in drama.
So it's not about becoming a hermit and shutting everyone out. It's about being more intentional in your connections. You're choosing quality over quantity, depth over superficiality.
Exactly.
And it all ties back to that idea of mental resilience we were talking about. The Stoics believed that practicing solitude was like preparing for battle.
Right, like that delivery man we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The one who memorized poetry during his breaks.
Yeah.
He was using those moments of solitude to build mental fortitude.
Exactly. He understood that true strength comes from within.
Not from external validation or fleeting distractions. It's about cultivating that inner wellspring of resilience that can sustain you through any challenge.
It's funny how solitude, which we often associate with weakness or loneliness, can actually be a source of so much power. It's like a hidden superpower.
It really is. It challenges our assumptions about success and happiness, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It makes you question whether constant connection and needing external validation are really fulfilling, or whether true contentment lies in those quiet moments of self-discovery.
And speaking of challenging assumptions, I remember the book also mentioned how the more life experience we gain, the more we might actually seek out solitude. Like it's a natural progression.
It does seem like the more life throws at us, the more we might find ourselves needing that time to reflect and make sense of it all.
Yeah, it's like you said, integrating those experiences into who you are and letting them shape you.
And I think that takes a certain amount of stillness, stepping back from the constant stream of information and interaction.
That makes me think of that line from the book. The more we live, the more we might seek the quiet to make sense of that living. It's like solitude becomes this necessary counterbalance.
It does, doesn't
The
it?
richness and complexity of life.
I love that quote. It really gets to the heart of what we've been discussing. Solitude isn't about rejecting life, but about enriching it, deepening it, really savoring it.
It's about taking those raw ingredients of experience and transforming them into something meaningful, something wise. So for our listeners out there who might be feeling overwhelmed by the pace of modern life, all of the demands on their time and attention, what would you say is the most important thing to take away from our deep dive today?
I think the biggest takeaway is this: don't be afraid of solitude. Don't see it as a sign of weakness or loneliness. Embrace it.
Yeah.
Embrace those quiet moments. Explore them. You might be surprised at what you find out about yourself and the world around you.
It's like giving yourself permission to unplug from the matrix, to step off the hamster wheel for a while and just be. And that doesn't mean you have to go on a silent retreat or become a hermit or anything.
Right, exactly. Solitude doesn't have to mean physical isolation. It's more like a state of mind, a conscious choice to to disconnect from all the noise and reconnect with yourself.
Yeah.
You can even find solitude in a crowded room if you know how to cultivate that inner stillness.
It's about creating those boundaries for yourself, those mental and emotional boundaries that allow you to recharge, to process, to just exist without the pressure to perform or produce. So as we wrap up today, our final thought for you is this. What does your experience tell you about solitude? Is it something you seek out, or does it make you uncomfortable? Maybe it's time to challenge those assumptions and give solitude a try. See what treasures you might unearth in those quiet spaces.